Okay, so I'm going to do a tutorial video based on the sort of work that we did in class today and the sort of live coding session that I did, and hopefully make this a little bit easier to kind of run through step by step to teach you guys not just how to draw with the drawing tools and how to manipulate shapes and stuff, but also how to start to parameterize a few of the numbers that you're using to draw things at x and y coordinates and to draw things at a size of a given x and y value, basically. That's going to be really handy for basically everything that we do moving forward, and yeah, hopefully by the end of it I'll have something to sort of draw a 200 by 200 tile that can be put into a function, which is something that you'll be learning about, which makes writing basically the same code over and over a lot easier, and something that you can have a lot of control over. It's easier to just show you and just sort of try and describe it. So yeah, the thing I was kind of trying to draw in class was something that was a sort of spacey solar system planets vibe, and I think I was more inspired by like sort of Doctor Who Gallifreyan language than like actual diagrams of solar systems. So I found this thing that somebody's made for I guess what the word escape might be in the language from that TV show. Because yeah, I think that looking at this, breaking it down, all it really is like a bunch of circles, and potentially an arc is the thing that I might be introducing as well, which is basically a pie slice. Yeah, I'm gonna totally write this from scratch, so just to show you all that you can, this isn't something that necessarily just has to sit there and you can't interfere with it. Yeah, it's not as scary as you expect. The setup function can just be written in there, and I'm guessing that we'll do a 200 by 200 canvas, and background color can be probably start with something kind of bluish, slightly purple bluish. Yeah, that looks nice. Cool. And grab again, I do suggest that you use RGB values, but the thing I did quickly mention is that if you put them in quotation marks, you can use this. It's what's called a hex code. It goes from 0 through to 9 every digit, and then A, B, C, D, E, F. So it's kind of hard to understand, and I can't properly explain it really because don't fully understand it. RGB, red, green, blue, is a lot easier to sort of think about, and just sort of change on the fly to make things suit what you're doing a little bit better. So if I just open the live P5, that should have already made the canvas and filled in a background without even having the function draw stuff there, which is interesting, right? It doesn't have to have this looping thing. It just has to have this thing where it's running the thing that P5 tells it to create a canvas, which is basically setting aside 200 pixels in the X and Y direction, and then colouring every one of those pixels with this red, green and blue value here. And again, you can kind of see there's a bit of red there, less green because literally it's purple, and then a bit more blue because it's quite a bluish purple. So yeah, that was the long way around to getting a blue background. and I'll just zoom in on this a little bit more, and I might just break the recording so I can make the text a little bit bigger for you to be able to see things a little better. Alright, so I've just zoomed in on it a little bit, and the next thing that we're going to do, I'm going to set up that the draw loop again, which because your code is being interpreted by one JavaScript and then two P5.js, it knows to do the looping thing where it calls draw every frame, so it works differently than the whole setup thing. But yeah, the first thing I'm going to do for the draw function this time around is set the stroke to be white, so 255, and then probably, and the stroke weight to be 2 pixels, and then I'm going to I'm going to refactor the canvas size to be a canvas X and canvas Y variable. So this is something I went over in today's tutorial, but like it's a good first sort of thing to do when you're making your own variables, to use things that you're using a lot. And yeah, we're basically using the X and Y of the canvas quite a lot when we're calculating where we're drawing things and what size we're drawing things. So if you set these variables to be this, you can replace canvas X and canvas Y. And that means the same thing, but it also means that we can now use canvas X and canvas Y anywhere else in our code, and they'll take those 200 numbers. So if I were to draw a circle, still doing that, thought I'd turn that off. I could draw it for its X and Y position, canvas X divided by 2, instead of calculating what that is, which is 200 divided by 2, so 100 on the X direction, so going from there to there and dividing it by 2, so there to there. Now the Y position, basically I'm putting in the middle, so it's the same. Canvas Y divided by 2, and I'm going to make this as big as the entire canvas, so I'll just use the X, go canvas X, and that's really big, but that's the entire size of that circle. Other thing I wanted to do here is just draw with lines for a second, because, you know, looking at this, it's a very like finicky sort of line-based drawing. So thing you can do there is go no fill, and that's built in. And now thinking about it, this looks a little bit too big. Just make it a little bit smaller by taking the size part of the circle function. Go canvas X times 0.9 maybe, and I think I'm happy with that. The next thing that I was going to draw here was this inner circle, and I'm actually going to draw some of the bits on top of it by filling in shapes, so it doesn't matter that I'm not drawing a complete circle. But I could also do a demonstration on how to draw 3/4 of a circle here. Circle. Now it's in the same place, so I can just take these, copy and paste it. So Control C, Control V, and then its size I want to be a little bit smaller, so let's go canvas x times 0.8, maybe 0.75. I personally like using this little, it's the asterisk you use for multiplication, so it's basically a times, but the x is an x because you're typing it on your keyboard, and yeah, the multiplication sign for that is that little star. It just makes more sense to my brain a lot of the time to do this times thing, because it's like a modifier on something where you're not trying to like, yeah, the only reason I'd use like a division thing, because division is generally a little bit harder to do sort of in your head, is for just dividing things by really basic things, by like 2 or 3 or 4 maybe, just to say this divided by 2. But you could also just as easily say canvas x times 0.5, couldn't you? Oh, sorry, yeah, you can. Again, that was the reason why you saw an extra circle there is because if you have the Live P5 panel extension, it will actually redraw your canvas every time you do like a keystroke. So like, this is as if it said canvas x times 0, so I was drawing it at x equals 0 for that circle there. And yeah, because the background's in the setup function, it doesn't run that again. It's just it's weird behavior, but just to keep in mind, I guess. But yeah, that's the same. But for most of you, you'll be using the web server, which is like it hosts it in your browser, so you have to save the file and send it to the browser again, so you don't see the change every time you tap a key, which is good, because a lot of the time when you're tapping keys, you're just putting in numbers and things are changing quite drastically. Anyway, the next part of it was a pie slice, so I'm going to be using, I think, the arc function for that. So how the arc function works is that it uses degrees basically to calculate a section of a circle, so where you want to draw the start of your pie slice and where you want to stop. And when you're breaking a circle down like that, one thing you should really do, just type it again because it wasn't there before, is angle mode degrees in setup. The other thing there I just did off recording is change that back to divided by 2, just so everything's neat. Just so the angle mode is based off of using 0 going around 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, 360 degrees for a full circle, instead of radians, which are like a mathematical thing based off of pi. So if I were to write the arc function, you basically start it as if it's a circle, so I could probably use the same stuff I was doing with the circles above. Copy the canvas x over 2 and the canvas y. And one thing I'm actually going to do is fill this and fill it in. I'm going to do something fancy and give it a transparency value. If you just give a color value, something like that, it's called alpha, and you'll see that when I finish drawing the arc. So the x and y position of this is in the middle of the canvas. The width and the height are going to be the same as the outer circle, actually. So canvas x times 0.9. I'm not sure if we need an x and y, or if it just uses the same thing because it's a circle, or if you can do it with an ellipse thing as well. The reason you'd need both is because there are more numbers you need to give it, more parameters, more arguments after it, So its starting point, I'm going to start it at 0 just to show you, and stop it at 90 degrees. That's actually not what I expected, but it's 0 degrees is apparently here, I think, because if I were to make that 180, that is very different than what okay, that's fine. Yeah, it draws from 0, which is apparently the right side there, around 180 degrees, and then stops drawing, and then because I've got the fill, it fills it in the solid colour, and this alpha value didn't do anything, don't know why, whatever. Okay, so what I want is for it to draw up here, so I know I can move it from here to here by subtracting 90, or actually maybe I'll just do this in the positive, so I'll add 90 and go 0, 90, 180, and then draw that to 0. So if I start that at 180 and go 0, you'll see that we basically have the opposite side filled in there. Okay, I know what the alpha's. It's another live P5 thing. It's because it's filling it in with the same. It's filling it in with transparency every frame. So by the time you have time to register it, it's already blocked it anyway. So yeah, the arc should probably start in between 180 and 270. So I'll just quickly do some maths in my head there. It's 180 plus 45, because 45 is half of 90, so that is going to be 225. Not 1225, that's all sorts of weird. That's the right starting point, and now the stopping point is going to be, well, it's 0 is there, this is 270, I'm going to add 45 to 270, which 315, I think is 315. 20, 30, 60, yeah it is. Yeah. So that's done the pie slice. And that is the basics of using an arc, and you'll notice that if I change the stroke to 0, it will be hard to see, but it does draw that outer line over the outside of the arc there, so I'll make the stroke weight really big. And 5, so you can see it a bit better. Very hard to see on that background, but yeah, that's how it draws. But I don't want that, so I'll get rid of that anyway. So the next thing that I guess I could draw is the circles that, or maybe these X lines that go over the circle. Alright, so one thing that I'm going to do here is to take the background color and to turn it into a variable. I'm going to call this secondary color or secondary col. And then replace the background with secondary col. Oop. That's really weird. Maybe if I did this. Oh, I know what I was doing wrong here. I wasn't putting it in square braces. I'm not going to explain why you need to put it in square braces yet, because it's basically because it's storing the numbers as three numbers grouped together called an array. That's later on, project 2 maybe. For now, just know that if you're putting colors as a variable, you have to put the three numbers in square brackets instead of circle brackets. And I'm also going to replace everything else, all the other colors, the black and white, with primary color, which is going to be a sort of nice golden, which is going to be super saturated and quite bright. I don't know exactly what I'm going for, but that should do the trick for now. So RGB is right there, square brackets, semicolon, just in case, and and what I'm going to do with that is change all the strokes to primary color. Alright, so this is pretty much how I'd envisioned the thing that I wanted to draw here, this little glyph. I'm going to start to show you how you can take something that you've drawn and turn it into a function. Surprisingly, this is a lot easier than even I thought it was, honestly. Especially given the sort of approach that we're taking with starting really simple and basically using the idea of if we have a variable for everything, a canvas X and canvas Y, we can use it as its X and Y location and its size scale, basically. I'm going to just start by drawing a function here and calling it draw glyph, and then because it's like setup and draw, it's a big function, but we're defining it ourselves. It's going to have these curly brackets, and I'm going to call the X and Y position variables X pos y pos. If you've got different colors in your code editor, by the way, you probably know this already, but it's just the theme. It doesn't change anything. And I think that I can call it size, but I'm going to call it glyph size just to make sure it's really specific to this draw glyph function. And now what I'm going to do is, well, given that we're using the same x and y coordinates, it doesn't really matter, but I think what I could just do is take every single instance of canvas x and canvas y, because they're the same, they're both 200, click at the start of them, hold alt, click, 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 and I think what I could do once this is all done is, instead of using the x, the y, and the size parameter, could just have one parameter that's just called size, basically. It's a lot of clicking though. Boop, 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 boop. There's probably a better way, but this is a lot of fun. I'm going to, hopefully that was all of them, delete all of these, go glyph size, and now take every single instance of every single part of the process of drawing that glyph, trying this just with a single parameter, and then putting it in the glyph size function body. Now in our main draw loop, what we can do is just call that function by typing glyph size, and the value we're going to give it for glyph size is 200. And it's not glyph size that we're calling, it's draw glyph. And that does the same thing. What I'm wondering is what happens if I were to replace this with 100. Alright. This is why it would be cool to have an x and y position that we can give it. So yeah, it basically draws it based on 0, 0 coming out to this max value, which is now 100 instead of 200 because it's not tied to the canvas x and y. So it's basically treating the entire scale of what it's drawing as 100 pixels. This also means that things will look slightly differently when you draw it smaller with stroke weights, because it's 1 pixel and 2 pixels that I'm going between rather than a certain fraction of the maximum size of it. So that's the one non-relative part of this glyph. And you'd really notice that if you probably drew it at like 10, it's going to look like just a yellow ball because it's drawn with relatively very thick lines. And if you draw this at 1000, you're going to see it's still the same thin lines, even though the canvas is absolutely massive. And I'm going to just show that by changing that to 1000 and 1000. It still looks quite nice though, thankfully. 200 and 200. And then calling that at 200. But the one other thing that I wanted to add to this function was an x and a y position. So y position. This is going to break if I update the code now, because we're not giving it an x and y position, but if I wanted to say draw it starting from the center of the canvas again, I could go, because the canvas X and Y are still outside of everything else, so I can just use them wherever. Canvas X over 2, canvas Y over 2. That's really interesting. I think it's given it a default value of 0 for the X and the Y position, which is oh no, that's fine. It's just because it's not using the X or the Y, so it won't. I'm glad, because it means you can all see it before I write this next line of code. But I'm going to quickly see if translate to the X position and the Y position. So that translates it canvas X over 2, canvas Y over 2, so the origin point is now here. Now if I were to draw this at that 100, it's going to be right here, sitting in the corner here. And yeah, now that this is in a function, what I can do is just spam this as many times as I want. So I'm actually going to do the multiplication thing and go times 0.3 on the x-axis, times 0.6 on the y-axis. I have no idea what that drew. 200. Okay, I think there's something in the function maybe that's not watertight, so I'll have a quick look at that. Now I'm realizing that this is the point where I'm starting to get into things you can do in your code that are totally not expected of you for project 1. Like basically any sort of transformations like translate and rotate, and there's actually one for scale as well, that require you to use this push and pop. They are not things that you need to be able to know. The only sort of transformation we want you to be doing for project 1 is to be able to put something like an X and a Y position for drawing the thing itself as a function and as part of the function, but just having one parameter for the size here is probably enough, really. And you might be able to talk to Phoebe or see the videos for other ways to do that. But for the rest of this, I'm going to be going into slightly more complex things that might give you ideas on sort of what you can do with the process of parameterizing things as functions, taking your drawings and turning them into basically little packages which can be deployed. Here I've done like quite a big one, and I said this before, but don't expect you to follow along. Please don't draw the same thing that I've drawn here, not just because it's semi-fan art, but because it's my sort of unique work and I want something that's your unique work to be created for this project. But yeah, that being said, we got up to the part where I was quickly going to touch on translation. So what that does is that it moves the point of origin that things are drawn from 0, 0 to where you specify. And here I've got an X and Y position tied to that, and that's part of, those are the variables that I've used as part of the function. So that means they take their numbers from, if you trace it back, where I've got here canvas X times 0.5, canvas Y times 0.5 in the draw glyph, where I've called it, that's where I've written it, that's where I'm calling it. And then if you get canvas X and canvas Y, you can see there at the top of the screen there is 200 and 200. So like if I turned them to 100 and 100, it would not only resize the canvas, but it would change where they're being drawn as well. So I didn't want to do that. Actually, is that actually okay? Oh, it's because the glyph size is, a good thing to do here would probably go canvas y times 0.5 if you're going to do something like that, and that would also scale everything. Yeah, okay. Just keeping everything relative, like these things can all be tied together if you like, but that's just sort of a process of figuring out how to make multiple parts of a function work together, and yeah, having more than one thing there, like only do it if you can kind of keep track of how things are being transformed. Like here, I don't want to get more complex myself because it's starting to kind of be like, I'm going to have to spend 20 minutes thinking about every little thing I'm doing. So I'll just change that back to 200, 200. No, this is fine as it is. But yeah, I was going to explain what push and pop actually do. I've told this to a couple of people who did this during the drawing exercise when they wanted to use it for the line stroke and colour options. And I think one person did sort of transformations last tutorial, but what it basically does is it saves the state of any transformation sort of functions, and when you use push and when you use pop, it restores. So it's like if you've got a whole bunch of code before you use a push, it might say the fill color is 255, so white. Then you put a push there, it saves it. You can put a fill color of 0, so it's black, so everything you draw after it is black. And then if you write the pop thing, it will restore what was written before the push. So the fill color will be reverted back to white. Any transformations that happen within here will be reset. And this is just really good to do if you're doing anything that translates, especially the origin point of drawing from X to anywhere else on the screen, because you really don't want to be translating the point that things are drawn from to somewhere random and then putting another modifier on that, so you're moving it back or forward again, and that's why things kind of move forward twice when I use the draw glyph function without a push, because it was translating it to here and then it was translating it to here or somewhere like that and drawing it somewhere off the screen. But now that I've got the translation after the push here, what it's doing is that before the transformation it saves the state, so the origin point is there. When it translates, when it translates to the X position and the Y position, which are in the middle of the canvas, so here, so it draws the glyph and everything here, and then when it gets to the end of executing all this code, the pop happens, so that origin gets reset from here back to here, meaning that it will be consistent if I use the function again I've got a different size and a different X and Y, to draw it, to now use the translate at X times 0.15, so only a little bit along, and then minus 0.7, so that's just 0, and that's not moving the Y at all, so it's drawing from the origin here for the second time I call the function and drawing it at a glyph size of 150, so about 3/4 of the size of the canvas. And now for this third one, I have a very slight move to the left, moving it in the Y direction by 0.45, so just before halfway, so about here, so it draws it, here, and then the size is 80, so that's just less than half the size of the canvas in X and Y direction, so it's a quarter of the whole size. And yeah, that's sort of the vision that I had for this. Having these three here I think is a kind of nice way to turn a single glyph into a little composition that might tile really well as a big screen size. So I'll just get on to the next thing you might be able to parameterize, and that is something that isn't going to complicate things too much, as long as you just know how to put them as parameters or arguments for the function, and that is the red, green and blue value of colors. I'm actually going to show you two ways of doing this, because I think the is one easier way as well. So I'm going to write a new parameter for the drawGlyph function called glyph primary. That's not being used, so it's sort of grayed out there, and it doesn't break anything to just have that. And then as part of the I'm going to just set it as make a new variable here called test color 1 for a new potential primary color, and it's a okay, something that I never did in this file is declare these variables properly. I really suggest that you go var before you do this, but because JavaScript is a very forgiving language, it just let me do that, and sorry if that caused any confusion, but yeah, that's some very, very interesting behavior, but I'm glad that it meant no roadblocks. And I'm thinking another bright color so it contrasts with the darker purple again, but let's just go just a really intense sort of cyan color. And first I'm going to try by using a hex code. So I think hex codes are a little more common if you're using something like Photoshop or something. If you're using like a color picker online, you're probably going to need to grab this more, but in code, again, because you're just like using 3 numbers, it's a little easier to understand. But I'm going to copy this hex code, save it as this variable here. So it's a number, sorry, it's a string, which is like letters and characters instead of a number. So you put it in quotation marks. And now that color is saved in that test color 1. And then I'm going to send that to which one's the bigger one? The biggest glyph primary. Yeah, okay. First I'm going to say specify. I'm going to send the primary color to the other 2. Now this won't do anything immediately because glyph primary isn't used in here at all. It's just directly using the primary color because we only had one before, but I'm parameterizing it now, so there'll be a bit of rewriting that. But here I'm going to call the function with what do I call it? Test color 1. And I think that'll still run, yeah. But now I'm going to take every point at which I use primary color, which is grabbing the value from outside of the function, to what's called the global scope, or like the entire scope of the file, and it's taking it straight from here, and I want there to be this sort of middleman of glyph primary, so you can change it every time you use the function. And just replace that with primary color everywhere. Not the secondary color, primary color. It's already changing it. Actually, that's kind of nice when there's a sort of bit and a bit, but because I'm keeping this consistent, I'll do it for everything. Primary. I think that's all of them. Sorry if I missed one there. And yeah, that's the simple way to parameterize a primary color. I'm going to quickly do that for the secondary color and just speed that up. Actually no, I'm not, because the secondary color is the background. The other thing I was going to do before I moved on from parameterizing color is show you the other way to do that with your red, green and blue values. I think the best way to do that, I think I can just use the same array honestly, and save the problems there. Now if I took the RGB and put it in there, I think it will do the same thing. Yeah, well, so you can use the RGB as well if you want to do that. But what you can actually do is, I'm thinking that this is quite advanced, so probably just stick with the single color thing, but what you'd be able to do if you wanted some real control over the different color channels, the red, green and blue, is go glyph B. Now send them all to an array, so square brackets of what's in there. That looks so weird. I think it's done 0, 0, 0, and that's why it looks like that. Do is just give it some really arbitrary values, so like 20, 150, 200. Oops. I think I've messed up how I drew it anyway, so it's going to be weird. 30, 170, 3. Yeah, so that's another way of giving it 3 color variables, which honestly I don't recommend. I think if you can keep everything as a variable at the top of your file, that will make things easier for me. Keeping colors like sort of stored up here like that is a really good way to organize your code, and I think it's just better than what I just did here. Here's a quick tutorial on how to have rotation as one of the parameters on your drawing any shape function. This is something that if you're doing it, again, talk to me in class, because like Translate, it's something that needs push and pop. It's really something you have to break down into small steps and fully understand before you really do it, because otherwise you're going to run into some kind of annoying to work through things, because you'll have transformations happening, like that sort of interfere with each other if you're not careful. And yeah, it can sort of get out of your hands. But for now I'm going to give the draw glyph function a rotation, which is just an empty variable right now, but I think rotation. I think that defaults to 0, so it'll be fine to just have that sitting there. What I'm going to quickly do is go over everything for the push and pop and press tab to offset it by 4 spaces. And stroke weight, organize the code a little bit. Circle line, refill. Hope that's a little more readable. And just keeping in mind at the moment we're telling it to rotate the glyph as we draw it, so this is for every single one of them because it's just part of the function, but it's giving it a default value of 0 because this rotation here doesn't have anything being sent to it, so when the function's being used there's no last parameter. It's as if we're putting 0 and 0 and 0. These are the rotations for all of them as it is. I'm going to quickly do this to organize the code a little bit more. Realize that this is actually something that can be improved. Tab can be really good for snapping them to sort of the same point in the line if you want to be really organized like that. And now we're going to see what happens if we give this a tiny bit of rotation. This one here. So it has rotated it and it kind of looks nice, but let's say we go 45. Now this is weird, right? Like it's rotated this, but it's rotated around like a clock, which is cool, but also like a little bit unpredictable. And that's because it's rotating it from the point of origin, because when I drew this whole glyph, I drew it assuming the top left of the canvas. One thing you can do if you're using rotation is if you're not drawing something, like I've suggested a couple people, if they're like drawing a leaf, that be drawn from the top left because it can be a shape that comes out like that, and then rotating it from that point is what you'd want to do because it's always going to be attached by that point. But if you're like me and you're doing a big circle, this isn't ideal. because rotating a circle from the top left means it's going around in a sort of clock way where it's come right around like that. But what would be more controllable is if it was being rotated from the center of the circle, and that actually means going back through this code and changing how everything's being drawn. And I'm going to take it upon myself to do that, just to sort of develop this project a tiny little bit more before I sort of call it with it. Here's a quick tutorial on how to have rotation as one of the parameters on your drawing any shape function. This is something that if you're doing it, again, talk to me in class, because like Translate, it's something that needs push and pop. It's really something you have to break down into small steps and fully understand before you really do it, because otherwise you're going to run into some kind of annoying to work through things, because you'll have transformations happening like that sort of interfere with each other if you're not careful, and yeah, it can sort of get out of your hands. But for now I'm going to give the draw glyph function a rotation, which is just an empty variable right now, but I think rotation. I think that defaults to 0, so it'll be fine to just have that sitting there. What I'm going to quickly do is go over everything for the push and pop and press tab to offset it by 4 spaces. And stroke weight, organize the code a little bit. Circle line, refill. Yeah, I hope that's a little more readable. And just keeping in mind at the moment we're telling it to rotate the glyph as we draw it, so this is for every single one of them because it's just part of the function, but it's giving it a default value of 0 because this rotation here doesn't have anything being sent to it, so when the function's being used there's no last parameter. It's as if we're putting 0 and 0 and 0. These are the rotations for all of them as it is. I'm going to quickly do this to organize the code a little bit more. Tab can be really good for snapping them to sort of the same point in the line if you want to be really organized like that. And now we're going to see what happens if we give this a tiny bit of rotation. This one here. So it has rotated it and it kind of looks nice, but let's say we go 45. Now this is weird, right? Like it's rotated this, but it's rotated around like a clock, which is cool, but also like a little bit unpredictable. And that's because it's rotating it from the point of origin, because when I drew this whole glyph, I drew it assuming the top left of the canvas. One thing you can do if you're using rotation is if you're not drawing something, like I've suggested a couple people if they're like drawing a leaf that be drawn from the top left, because it can be a shape that comes out like that. And then rotating it from that point is what you'd want to do, because it's always going to be attached by that point. But if you're like me and you're doing a big circle, this isn't ideal, because rotating a circle from the top left means it's going around in a sort of clock way, where it's come right around like that. But what would be more controllable is if it was being rotated from the center of the circle, and that actually means going back through this code and changing how everything's being drawn. And I'm going to take it upon myself to do that, just to sort of develop this project a tiny little bit more before I sort of call it with it. So I realised the really hacky fix to this would just be to draw the circle at the origin there, which means subtract half of the canvas size that way, and store that as a variable. I'm going to call it glyph offset equals. This is something that you can totally avoid if you put any level of forethought into drawing more complex things like this if you're using rotation and scale, but it's okay. It's just a little bit of like sort of extra code for me. Canvas x divided by 2. Negative canvas x divided by 2, I think, is what will work fine for that. And I'm going to have to apply this to the x and y position of every single thing that I've drawn here. So the answer to that was moving the glyph offset into the function body. So it's recalculating every time we do the function and tying it to the size of the glyph instead of the size of the canvas. So it works at all the different sizes that we call it at. That's another thing. It's interfering with, or it's interacting. I'm calling it interfering because it isn't agreeing with me, but it's interacting with the that size parameter that we made. So now that if I go, this is for the big one, to 70, it's rotating in the same place. So I actually figured that out. I figured out that aspect of it, but I'll just have to change the x and y's to be in the right place again. can already see that with what I'm doing here, it gives you so much more control over some of how I'm drawing it, which works really well for this particular example. And I definitely don't want this to be like a follow along thing, but it should give you some sort of ideas of what you can potentially do in the future with your projects. But again, this took me a while to kind of get the hang of and be able to fix errors on the fly like this. So it will probably take you a lot more time to do something like this. And that is totally understandable. Really quirky thing I'm going to do and then like not explain it all because it's just me being silly, is put some animation on it. This should display properly in the online live panel. Oh, okay. Again, this is something for later projects, but the background and the draw loop, that'll fix it. There we have it. Ridiculous nonsense. Now oh, there. Minus 2. Minus 3. Don't lie there. This is how we have fun with P5. Now, I don't want you to do that, but one thing that you could do to test like different positions of drawing things. Just comment this out. Let's not use that, but you could also use mouseX and mouseY. So instead of drawing them here, here, and here, I'm going to make one of these glyphs. Yeah, that one works. Draw it at mouseX and mouseY. Now look, it is a mouse cursor now. And this is what if you remember back in week 1, this is what the chord space program does. It has a little circle, follow your mouse, and also display text, I think, to tell you where the X and Y position is. So I guess to loop right back around, I'm going to kind of recreate that aspect of chord space and put that in have text, like a little text helper of what the mouseX and mouseY are. Shouldn't capitalize it, I think. As a percentage of canvas X and Y, so change the text to make that even better. so beyond anything that you should be doing in this course, but I hope it's at least interesting. Now if I'm going to round that number, what I would do is so the floor thing here rounds a number to its nearest whole number downwards, and seal rounds it up, so it's all going to be 1. But if I go round, I can specify 1 decimal place, and that's sort of what I was going for there. That's the last of the tutorial sort of style content I'm going to do, and just move on to the AI stuff next. So I'm going to do the tutorial run through of how to potentially try and use codiumate AI now. I'm going to guess there's extension, yeah, so codiumate, and I'm going to use it to produce a little drawing as a function and get rid of all this really complex code that I ran through. So I just allowed codiumate to sign in through my GitHub account and connect that up. Let me know on tutorial if you want help with that, but I think that'll be part of the sort of project pipeline in the future, GitHub, and that's something that I'm not as experienced helping people set up, but I can do my best there. But I just did a sort of sign-in process with 2-factor authentication that you probably won't have to, because I have the GitHub app on my phone. So I thought it was relevant. codiumate sits in your extension on your little side panel here. The extensions sometimes do that. I have one for a game engine, one for Git and stuff like that. Codiumate is, I think it uses ChatGPT, and it will suggest you code based on the sort of context in which you ask for the instructions. So I'm going to take all these drawing parts of the code out of the main loop, but leave the little default there, and ask it for, I'm going to comment out, oh, I don't need to comment out this function, it can, because it's a separate function. But what I'm going to do is try and ask it to produce a glyph, like in class Phoebe had it draw a cat or something very vaguely resembling a cat. And I'm going to ask, can you produce write a function to draw a dog. prompt in case I want to ask it again. Okay, so the draw dog function uses an x and y to place it, and it kind of breaks down every step, the body, the head, the ears, the eyes. I'm going to see what they do when I invoke that function. I've pasted it outside of the draw loop at the bottom of the code file. Now if I write draw dog, oops. Very weird. And then give it an x and y of 50 and 50 because it doesn't know how big anything is at the moment. It has drawn a dog. It's very big. Can you update this to add a scale parameter or argument on the canvas X and canvas Y. Let's see if we can ask it about things in the global scope, so outside of the other functions. Add focus, some current file. Set up draw. I have a feeling that this isn't going to work very well, but let's give it a go. It does know to call it canvas X and canvas Y because I kind of chose the most generic things to call those variables. But already it's like, this is why you're going to have to be very specific when you're working with AI assistants here, and I totally understand if you find this difficult. And now when I call this function, I have to give it a scale, so 0.5. Oh, it has done it right. So if we think about this, it's placing it at an x and a y multiplied by a dog scale variable. So this is honestly really good. Like you can see all the code is broken down to be quite like laid out how you can kind of probably read it, maybe better than the stuff that I wrote earlier, honestly, because mine has all these offsets and stuff. And I didn't expect you to really understand it because I was kind of just going through the capabilities. But as you can see, it's going to take a lot of sort of looking at and changing things. Like, do you really want to draw your dog to kind of look like two rectangles with outlines? It doesn't have eyes. You're gonna have to know like where everything's being drawn. Maybe maybe draw the eyes on top of everything else. I can't see their tail, but oh no, I can. That looked very weird for a second. Because it's like, where are the eyes? I'm going to place this dog at canvas x times 0.5 and canvas y times 0.5. Seems to have worked well, and then see how it scales at different sizes. It's still very small because it's given you like fixed values for where it draws everything, and that's something that you'll have to, if you're doing something like this and you want to parameterize things properly, that's a lot of the time stuff that you have to be able to think through as you do it, and having it write all the stuff for you might mean going back and changing things, so it can be difficult. Now obviously if you're using this, what you should do is write in a comment at the bottom something to the effect of, I got the basic design for this dog from codiumate AI, and then just add whatever else you want to sort of add a message to your to myself or to whoever's grading your work. But I'm pretty happy with that because we've sort of taught you that this is based on ChatGPT. It takes data from the internet to train its AI stuff, and it should be you that's thinking about sort of what that means. But really just don't take code straight from something the AI has given you to do your work, because you'll run into a lot of technical and sort of creative dead ends. But as you can see here, it can kind of help you, but you can also see that it's outlined with this color because at the end of its function it tells it to fill it in a certain color and stuff, but it doesn't reset the state of that color stuff. So I think one thing I do is put a push and a pop in the drawDog function, like I did with the other one when I did transformations. Oh, and that's actually fixed a lot of it. So that was kind of cute, and that could be a nice thing to just experiment with and see if it can take the code and then maybe options, nope, test, explain, enhance. This is it enhancing itself, but I'm going to go a step further and ask it to enhance the code that I wrote further. Oh, I think its enhancement to its own code is to do very little and just take the comments out. Yeah, no, I think it cut it down a little bit, which might make it worse for you. But I'll make the scale of this one a little bit bigger. What's really cool about this, honestly, is that it got the centering the dog on the to draw it from the middle. It got that right first try. I don't know if it's done it for everything though, like I have no idea what the eyes are. Let's change. The co-ord twice, move it along in the X direction, 7. We got 2 dogs. And this one can be here. Oh. Okay. Oh, I don't know what this is doing. It's trying to suggest things, but I don't want it to. I think it's because it's in a sort of change mode. Review changes. Ah, okay. I'll quit that. I don't need any of the changes that it was trying to make. 7.4, make this one a little bit bigger. Now you got 2 dogs, and maybe your pattern could be I'm just thinking it would be really interesting if you could like rotate one of them and you could ask it to give you a rotation thing, but again that's something that you'd have to look through my tutorial for all the sort of technical things you have to think about, like transformations have to happen with a push and a pop in the function. But again, you could ask it to add color variables and stuff like that if you just highlight everything. Ask for the suggestion, read through it as thoroughly as you can to sort of know what's going on, and if you feel like there's a gap between what it's telling you and what you kind of know about what you're doing, then maybe it's time to take a step back and recap a couple of the sort of tutorial videos and stuff, so you don't kind of make complicated problems for yourself unnecessarily when you could have a really like clean, well explained project that you understand and would probably get a better grade for, yeah, to be honest, than something that is like heavily assisted by codiumate. And now what I was going to do is get the glyphs that I was drawing earlier. And ask the AI to kind of give me some suggestions on my draw glyph function. So if I just copy all of this, draw glyph. What could I say? Could you suggest or maybe I could actually ask it about the specific things that make up this pattern here that I built up from scratch based on a reference image, and I'll cite in a comment when I release the code file, but you can see it's like there's a bigger circle and a lot of smaller circles, so I wonder if it knows which one the bigger circle is. Could you suggest a different, actually could you rearrange some of the smaller circles in this function? They should still be contained in the largest haven't commented this to say where all the circles are, and I really should, so I'll do that when I release the code to you all, but yeah. Which is this one. On line 87, just to give it the benefit of the doubt. It's really thinking with this. Now, what I'm going to do is comment out the original function and copy in and see what we got. I'll put it at the bottom because I don't want to lose my original one. That's odd. Okay, so it has moved things around a bit, and you can probably see that I'm going to call this draw glyph 2, just to make sure we can really see the difference. I'm going to uncomment the original one that I wrote. So this is the original pattern here. Now I'm going to take just this one and this is in the draw loop. Draw it once here, draw it again, but make this one for on the other side. So the one on the right is going to be changed to be one that here I drew. And as you can see, it made very minor changes, but like, look at that. That's really like, that seems considered, right? Like it's moved this circle from here to here, and it's still within this sort of little like orbit pattern. And it's moved this one. It's actually turned this around to be here. So it like is where they intersect. So it's almost an improvement on the design, honestly. That's kind of spooky. Yeah, so you can definitely see like the benefit of getting sort of code suggestions. I'm going to ask it to clean up the original one I wrote, but first I'm gonna Control-C, Control/ to comment it. Going to Options, Enhanced. I'll just apply the changes to see. And if things break, you know that the enhance function isn't totally reliable to just give you things that make the code better and more readable. Oh my goodness, it's like given really good, like that saved me time. It's actually, I'm going to keep this in the file and say, oh, no, it's broken it. So this is going to be glyph 3. So this is a new sort of variant on what I did, but it's now explained in very basic terms, but probably makes sense, because that's what I did. This is how I'd sort of describe this in just a couple of words. But I'm not sure about the transformations. I still think the way I did it is easy to understand, even if it was probably a little bit more condensed. Yeah. But that's up sort of to you to decide. And this is the function I wrote from scratch, but cleaned up but modified and commented by codiumate. That's something I'd sort of expect you to write if you were to do use the enhance feature. Just sort of be able to explain how it's changed your code, and yeah, kind of just be honest about it, because it has obviously changed the output quite drastically. Like, you might have to go back and change the code again to get that back, or you might just want to take the comments and put them back on the original stuff, which I'm going to do.